Ever feel like you need a secret decoder ring to figure out how to teach different age groups?
Mm.
Well, today's deep dive is all about cracking the code for teaching Aikido to younger students. We're diving into this training program outline you sent us, breaks down how to tailor your approach for preschoolers all the way up through young adults.
And it's incredible how much those teaching strategies change, even within a few short years.
Yeah.
Simply because, the way a 3-year-old learns,
Oh, yeah,
it's completely different from how a 13-year-old learns.
totally. So let's start with those littlest warriors, ages 3 to 5. One thing that really struck me about this outline is how much it emphasizes using play in Aikido instruction for this age group. I mean, it makes sense, right? They're discovering the world through play. But I'm curious, how do we actually apply that to something as structured as Aikido?
That's the key. It's about disguising the structure.
Mm-hmm.
Think about basic Aikido movements like rolls, or even just learning how to fall safely. Those can easily become games.
Okay.
For instance, you could have them practice forward rolls by pretending to be animals,
Right.
like a playful puppy rolling in the grass.
Mm.
Or to teach them about balance and spatial awareness, you could create an obstacle course where they have to navigate around trees, which could be cones or cushions, without losing their balance.
Oh, I love that. Turning the dojo into an imaginative playscape. You know what else caught my eye about this age group? The outline mentions that preschoolers are starting to understand the concept of property, which I never really thought about in terms of Aikido before.
That's such a great point. And it ties directly into a core value of Aikido, respect. So at this age, you can start introducing the idea of respecting the training equipment, treating it with care, putting it back in its designated spot, not using it as a trampoline.
Right. Because a wayward boken can cause chaos in a preschool Aikido class.
Exactly. And it extends to personal space, too. This is a good time to start teaching them about boundaries and how those relate to respecting others on the mat.
Right.
So not only are they learning Aikido basics, but they're also developing important social and emotional skills.
It's amazing how much learning can be packed into what seems like just plain old fun, right?
Absolutely. And as those preschoolers grow, their capacity for learning does too.
Which brings us to our next age group, 6 to 9-year-olds. At this stage, they're transitioning from purely playful learning to a point where they crave a little more structure, a few more rules.
They're like little sponges at that age, eager to soak up new information and skills. So how can we adapt our Aikido instruction to keep them engaged and challenged?
Well, the outline mentions that they can remember simple sequences, but only for a short period of time. So repetition and variation are key. Think about short, engaging drills that repeat those fundamental movements, but change up the delivery. One day it's copy the sensei. The next day it's a friendly competition to see who can execute a technique the smoothest. It's like sneaking in the learning when they're too busy having fun to realize it. I also noticed that this section of the training program highlights the development of gross motor skills in this age group. I'm picturing like cartwheels and handstands. How does that translate to Aikido specifically?
This is where you can really start building a strong foundation for their Aikido practice. Those developing gross motor skills mean they're ready for more dynamic movements. Forward rolls become smoother, their balance improves, and they can begin to grasp the coordination required for more intricate Aikido techniques.
So we're talking about taking those basic rolls and falls and turning them into the building blocks for more advanced techniques?
Exactly. This age is a great time to introduce more complex falling techniques, like learning to break fall safely from different positions.
Which is a skill that translates way beyond Aikido, by the way.
Absolutely. It's about developing body awareness and coordination that they can use in all aspects of their lives. And as those gross motor skills continue to improve, you can introduce more footwork drills that challenge their coordination and spatial awareness. This is also a good stage to start incorporating partner work that emphasizes timing and control, laying the groundwork for more advanced Aikido techniques down the line.
Okay, so they've mastered rolling like puppies, navigating obstacle courses, and maybe even practicing a little light sparring. But what happens when those sweet, eager-to-please kids morph into, teenagers?
Ah, yes, the teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
This training program certainly doesn't sugarcoat this stage, mentioning their, shall we say, heightened capacity for criticism.
Okay, so how do we as instructors handle that why phase, that questioning spirit, without letting it throw us off our game on the mat?
The key is to shift our perspective. Instead of seeing their questioning as a challenge to our authority, we can view it as an opportunity for them to develop critical thinking skills and a deeper understanding of Aikido.
I like the sound of that.
Encourage them to ask why. Why is this technique done this way? Why is this principle important? When they feel heard and respected, even if you don't have all the answers, their critical thinking can lead to some really insightful observations.
It's about guiding that questioning spirit rather than trying to stifle it. Now, speaking of channeling energy, this training outline also mentions that teenagers are really starting to identify with groups, which seems like it could be both a good and a bad thing in the dojo.
You're absolutely right, but it's definitely something we can use to our advantage. This is a prime opportunity to emphasize the collaborative aspects of Aikido. Think group drills where they have to work together to achieve a common goal, partner rotations that encourage them to learn from each other, even friendly competitions where teamwork is the key to success. These kinds of activities not only enhance their Aikido skills, but also foster a sense of belonging and camaraderie, which are so important during these formative years.
It's almost like you're teaching them valuable life lessons without them even realizing it. And speaking of real-world applications, I also noticed this program talks about how teenagers are starting to grapple with, like, problems of reality. Is there a way to connect Aikido principles to those very real challenges they're facing outside the dojo?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes Aikido so much more than just a martial art. It's about developing the whole person, inside and out. Concepts like conflict resolution, self-discipline, and perseverance, those aren't just relevant on the mat, they're life skills.
So it's about drawing those parallels between what they're learning in Aikido and how they can apply those principles to their everyday lives.
Precisely. Encourage them to think about how they can use those principles to navigate difficult situations peacefully and constructively.
Okay, before we move on to our final age group, I have to ask, what about those teenagers who are less interested in philosophical discussions and more interested in, testing their limits?
That's completely normal too. Remember, adolescence is a time of tremendous physical and emotional changes, and some teens are going to be more drawn to the physicality of Aikido. This is a great time to challenge them with more physically demanding techniques and drills, but always with an emphasis on safety and control.
So it's about finding a balance between challenging them physically and nurturing their emotional and mental growth.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final age group, those young adults on the cusp of adulthood.
Okay, so ages 15 to 18. These are the students who are starting to think about their futures, figuring out who they are and what they want to do with their lives.
And their Aikido training should reflect that. What's fascinating about this training program is how it highlights the development of dynamic logical thinking at this age. They're not just accepting things at face value anymore. They're analyzing, questioning, seeking deeper meaning.
So it's time for Aikido 2.0.
I like that. It's less about rote memorization and more about thoughtful engagement. This is the stage to introduce them to more nuanced concepts and encourage them to really delve into the art form.
I imagine this is where those discussions about Aikido philosophy and history could get really interesting.
Absolutely. Encourage them to research different styles of Aikido, explore the philosophical underpinnings of the art, maybe even have them lead warm-up exercises or teach a technique they're particularly passionate about. It's about empowering them to become more independent thinkers and practitioners.
I bet you get some amazing insights from those discussions. This training program also mentions that this age group is at their physical peak. I'm not sure if I should be impressed or a little bit scared.
It's pretty impressive. They have coordination, balance, strength, agility. They're primed for advanced training.
So what does that look like in terms of their Aikido practice?
Well, this is where you can introduce more physically demanding techniques, more complex combinations, and even start incorporating elements of strategy and sparring.
Okay, you had me at sparring. So we're talking about really challenging them to push their physical limits.
Yes, but always within a safe and controlled environment. Remember, Aikido is about self-defense, not aggression. So while we want them to develop their physical abilities, it's equally important to emphasize the importance of control, discipline, and respect. And that goes for all age groups, really.
It's a good reminder that even as these students are becoming, more physically capable, the mental and ethical aspects of Aikido remain just as important.
Exactly. It's not just about how to execute a technique, but when and why. And this training program makes an interesting point about this age group, too. Apparently, they have a preference for physical contact and dynamic activities, which I have to admit, even as an adult, some of my favorite Aikido classes were the ones where I got to really move and put those skills into practice.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. So how can instructors tap into that preference in a way that challenges these young adults while still, honoring the principles of Aikido?
Well, this is a great time to really delve into those physically engaging aspects of Aikido. Think intensive partner work, where they have to adapt their movements based on their partner's responses. Disarming techniques where timing and precision are critical, maybe even introduce some friendly competition sparring tournaments, demonstrations to test their skills and strategic thinking. But again, always with an emphasis on respect and self-control.
It's like they get to experience that intensity and challenge, but within the safe and structured environment of the dojo.
Exactly. Because it's important to remember, even though these students are on the verge of adulthood, their Aikido journey is far from over. It's a lifelong pursuit of growth, refinement, and self-discovery.
That's a great point. It's not like you graduate from Aikido at 18 and you're done. There's always more to learn, more ways to grow.
Absolutely. And I think that's a valuable lesson for anyone, regardless of age or experience level.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from those playful preschoolers to those young adults who are about to head out into the world. And I have to say, it really drives home the point that teaching Aikido is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It requires us, as instructors, to meet our students where they are developmentally and guide them on a path of lifelong learning.
You said it perfectly. It's about recognizing that each student is unique, with their own strengths, challenges, and learning style.
And that brings us to something I've been thinking about throughout our deep dive today. We've talked a lot about the technical and developmental aspects of teaching Aikido, but I think it's important to acknowledge the immense responsibility that comes with being an Aikido instructor. We're not just teaching physical techniques, we're shaping young minds.
That's a really important point. And it connects back to that idea we were discussing earlier about the why behind the how. As instructors, we have the opportunity to instill in our students those core values of Aikido respect, discipline, harmony.
And those values, those lessons, they extend far beyond the walls of the dojo.
Absolutely. It's about empowering them to not only be skilled Aikidoka, but also compassionate, responsible human beings.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about, not just in terms of the techniques and the drills, but the deeper responsibility of being an Aikido instructor.
It's a journey, that's for sure.
It really is. A huge thank you to our expert for sharing their incredible insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the deep dive.
Thank you for having me.
And to you listening out there, we hope this deep dive into teaching Aikido across different age groups has given you some food for thought, some fresh ideas, and maybe even a renewed sense of purpose as you continue on your own Aikido journey, whether you're a seasoned sensei or just starting out. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.